Good day to you. Let's try something different today. Let's take a walk. You know, one of the reasons that I bought the house where I did is so that I can walk to campus. That's very important to me. I don't know if you feel the same about where you live, but I like to have to walk to get places, and this is one of those days because I don't have a vehicle, with one of them being in the shop. But that function, me being able to walk to campus, is because I made a decision what to do, or I should say, my wife and I made a decision what to do with our money in terms of buying a house in this location and also being able to walk to campus because of that. So it's an example, maybe not that relevant to you guys, given your age range, but certainly something that will hold true for most of you in the future. When it comes to where you live, a lot of it has to do with the way that you use your money. And that's the case for most things in life when it comes to needing to purchase things to serve basic needs. So we head into this next chapter now, which is on financing. And financing as it cuts across these 8 different countries. And financing is really all about following the trail of money. If you can follow the trail of money, then you can find out where the influences are in the content. And I'm going to hope to illustrate that for you this week, both with this video lecture and also with the discussion question and the quiz. Many of you will recognize the house that I'm passing right now. It's the Sigma Pi fraternity. Some of you may find it amusing that we live here, but it's actually a very good relationship that we've worked long and hard for, have a mutual respect for each other, etc. All right, let's dig into it. When you're talking about financing media, you're talking about a few options, some of which you probably never heard of before you read the chapter. Option number 1 is the one that most of the world uses. It's advertising. That's where most of the world has gone, is basically consigning the funding of media content over to those companies that are making money off of other products, which use the media to advertise those products. It's seen as, quite frankly, psychologically, it's seen as, oh, well, then nobody's really paying for it because it's just built into the price. Well, you really are paying for it. About 5% of every cost of everything you purchase goes towards an advertising budget. It may not make a big difference for a stick of gum, but it sure does when it comes to buying a car or a house. At any rate, you got advertising. Then next up is government appropriation. Government appropriation is when the government says we're going to allocate money for this because if we don't, maybe nobody else will, or we just believe that we should be doing things like this. So you see that in some of the countries, Mexico for one, just a quick example where you have the government selling oil, and then the money that comes from that they use to help fund some public television stations. Because who else would have the resources to do that or feel that they could make money off it? At any rate, government appropriation, we have some of that here in the U.S. We have some funding that goes to the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which funds both PBS, also funds NPR, one on TV, one on radio. After government appropriation, another funding method, one that I'm pretty sure is new for most of you, is the license fee. The license fee you see a lot in European countries, including England, Sweden, France. The license fee is a fee that you pay as a sort of right to be able to watch public television. So the public television has to live up to really high standards. It has to be some of the best of the best. And actually in Europe it is. There's nothing that beats a good BBC documentary or even a BBC comedy. And that's a completely government funded because the license fees are collected by an independent agency there. And then you have to, and then the agency allocates the money to the BBC. So there is a break in the chain. And they drive around in little vans and they will monitor frequencies of households and they will see if you're in their database and if you've bought a TV, which is what triggers a license, and you haven't paid your license fee, then you're going to get fined. And so how many people are caught, I don't really know, but it's just a completely different system. What that does is that frees up the BBC to be truly independent, doesn't have to worry about offending advertisers or even the government for that matter. because the fees are coming directly from the sale of TV sets. It's kind of an interesting concept. It also means you don't have to litter, as some people feel, the media content with advertising. Like, how many times are you stuck on a radio station, you just can't get to music because it's just ads after ads after ads. So that's a nice feature of the license fee. Another funding method that we have in the realm of possibilities is donation. Donation is where you solicit help, usually from citizens or people who are big fans or people who believe in the arts. You see this going on the PBS stations in the US. Very, very, in my opinion, unseemly to be spending all those hours of programming, begging for money. Just don't think it suits the esteem of a station like that. So I'm kind of biased against donation. I think it's an unseemly kind of almost begging, using the airways to beg process, but it is necessary for some. And then the final one that I want to mention that's a possibility for funding is user fees or subscriptions. They're kind of the same animal. It's the idea that you pay for what you get. And actually, over the years, there have been lots of plans floated before Congress to just let you pay for the cable channels that you use. Like, if you don't watch ESPN, why should you have to pay? That's some people's thinking, but that legislation has never gone through. So user fees, you buy a newspaper at the newsstand. User fee, you pay for HBO. User fee, you have a deduction goes from your checking account to pay for Netflix. That's what user fees is all about. Now, when we look across the countries, I will sum them up a little bit differently instead of going through each individual one. We can say that, generally speaking, for newspapers in all of the countries, advertising is used. Even in communist newspapers in China, advertising is used. Advertising is used to fund part of the paper. That's where newspapers have gone. And in part, it's just the reality, because newspapers are having a hard time surviving in a world where you can get a lot of information on your laptop and your smartphone. So across the board, advertising you will find in newspapers. When it comes to broadcasters, you have a breakdown where in Europe, most of those countries have big chunks of their broadcasting spectrum that is non-profit or at least public broadcasting. So in England, half of the channels, the first few channels, are BBC channels. And they get more money than the commercial broadcasters do sometimes. And they produce some really thick, long, detailed, interesting programming. They aspire to be the best. In France, you've got an interesting mixture where the license fee funds the public broadcasters, but by law, the public broadcasters have to also use 50% advertising revenue. And that is just so uniquely French. Always having the government compete against the commercial sector. It's a very strange relationship where the government is both the referee and also the person who's pushing the commercial competitor. And they do that by making a 50-50 split between government funding and advertising funding for the public broadcasters. And then also in Sweden, you'll find a similar thing where public broadcasters are funded. Tons of radio stations are funded through that license fee. Here in the U.S., as we know, most broadcasters are entirely commercial. They're money makers. They're supposed to make a profit. If you don't make a profit, you change your radio format. If you don't make a profit, your TV show's off the air, etc., etc. And which takes us now finally to the web. The web is still emerging. It's still a very confusing medium. And to a lot of people, because it is not making the money that a lot of traditional media content providers believe that it should be. I'm talking about newspapers. I'm talking about magazines. Excuse me. So it's still emerging. Certain features of the web, like Facebook, for example, are making a lot of money, advertising revenue, of course, being the main means. But that one is still playing out as a medium. I just want to close out by saying a couple words about Ghana and Lebanon. In those countries, they're just basically struggling to get any funding at all to fund their media. So whether it comes from the government, through the pockets of politicians, through fundraisers, donations, commercials, if they can get it. Sometimes commercials don't work because who wants to see an advertisement for a product that they can't afford or that they don't understand? So like deodorant in some parts of Ghana will be seen as, what is that? If you're a villager and you're seeing that for the first time, it's You have to go through a process somewhat of, I guess you could call it indoctrination, where you're learning what society expects of you, in this case with deodorant. So anyway, that's about it for today on financing. I hope you have a great day.